Council, come to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mandy, could you please call the roll?
DeYoung. Vanderhorst.
Here.
Danstruck.
Here.
Charleston.
Here.
Hopkins.
Here.
Sport.
Here.
All right, can I get a motion for approval of the tentative agenda? So moved. Hopkins?
Support.
Carlstone? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Sport.
Yes.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Danstruck.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on, certified list of police sergeant candidates. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, what we have here is a civil services certification of police sergeant candidates. And in explaining this item, I'd like to go ahead and turn the floor over to Chief McShahey to walk the council through this item.
I'll get in trouble if I don't use one of these. Rick? Yes, yes. Good shot. Okay, so we had a opening created by a vacancy some time ago. And we finally got around to holding our promotional boards. The three candidates that you see up on the board passed the process and have been ranked on this board in alphabetical order: Hunter Borgie, Bryce Stone, and Cody Rose. And we expect, pending council approval, to make a final decision hopefully this week.
Okay, anything to add, Mike?
No, sir.
All right, can I get a motion for approval of this list?
So moved.
Support.
Calvin Banstra and Branderhorst. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Danstruck.
Yes.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Sport.
Yes.
Motion passed. This time we have an opportunity for public forum. Anyone wishing to address council regarding any agenda item, step forward to the microphone, state your name and address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
My name is E.J. DeYoung. I live at 113 West First Street, Ward 4. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day. We ask that you would bless us as we converse on matters before us. Bless this council. Bless the words that we share with one another. And most of all, have us always glorify you. And all this we ask in your precious name. Amen.
Tony Bachhoven, 1702 Neal Drive. I want to address item E1A, 1B. During the budget hearings, I apologize, I don't remember what night it was, but one of the nights you had this slide is your packet, slide 7, entitled Key Issues for FY 23-24 Marion County Partnerships. 2 of the 4 items on there, one of them being renewal of the current local option redistribution agreement, which expires on December 31, 2023 for $440,000 annually. The other is a partnership for the proposed Pella Indoor Recreation Center. As of 5 o'clock tonight, Board Chair Johnner told me that she personally has not had anyone from the City of Pella reach out to her or the Board of Supervisors in regards to the Pella Rec Center or the University Street extension. My question is, how can you possibly vote on something like the budget when it's as large as it is, but you haven't contacted all your partners yet? If it's truly a key item, where does the money come from if in the event you don't get it? And how can you vote on a budget when you don't have those answers? I expect that I won't get an answer here tonight, so I'll have a seat, but I'll just leave that with you.
Anyone else? All right, moving on. Oh, sorry.
My name's Harry Ehrlich, 725 Countryside Lane. I only make a mistake once that I know of. Is now the proper time, not under the public hearing as far as the budget's concerned? Doesn't make any difference if it's now or then? I'm used to public hearings being opened and have a comment and then
Yeah,
close.
and that's what we will do before we do the.
I'll go ahead now since I've already
Yeah,
up here
that's
and
fine.
got your attention. First of all, I would like to thank the staff for directing me to where I could find the full detailed budget. That was here or at the city library. I went over to the city library, spent 2 hours going through it. Hopefully I'll sound better. And I want to thank the staff for actually a very fine developed budget. I've done 12 or 13 myself in my career, and it's well documented and well prepared. Also, going out of the library, I happened to go down the alleyway that was mentioned as a future capital project, and my own opinion is I think it should be moved up a little bit. It's a pretty dangerous situation out there, a potential situation out there, but just an observation, people walking in and out of the community center. As it relates to the budget, my major issue is the continuing to be the funding of the both the infrastructure and the indoor rec center by the borrowing or future debt service that's going to be required. We're going to have interim debt service this year. It's documented in the budget. It's going to be around $2 million for the designs, and then sometime early next year, we're going to have to make the decision on go or no go. And that's going to involve $17 million or more of financing. And to quote the city administrator, if it's possible to do financing based on the worldwide conditions, based on interest rates, based on a lot of other factors. So I'm concerned about using the reserve funds that you're going to use. You've already approved or authorized that. But going farther into the budget cycle, it's going to be ingrained and it's going to be in concrete, so to speak, as you move forward. So the second part of that is there any update on contributions or grants for the center as they're mentioned in the 5-year CIP? There's no detail, but that would make me feel more comfortable if I knew that there were movement and developing additional funds from those sources. So I guess that's a question that the council can either address now or at some point. The next point is on the water rate suggestion that there may be up to 7% increase needed to fund future projects. Not a lot of information there. I've done several cost of service studies in my career, and I assume there will be a report that will be coming to the council considering a water rate increase. And I would just suggest when you look at fixed and variable costs that maybe 3 or 4% might be a target, but I'm not sure the 7% is the number. Plus, looking at the water sales revenue, it's flat. I don't understand where that is, if it's budgeted into the budget now or if it's going to be added if you do a water rate increase. Next is the garbage collection contract. Was mentioned several times that there might be an increase required. I don't see any in the budget. Hopefully that's good news that there isn't one required. I guess that's a question. Will there be an increase or not an increase? The service that we get is exceptional. I used to run a refuse franchise for a city, so I'm kind of familiar with the program and how it's done. So I would say it's continuing on with a good service. The 5-year CIP, very well thought through, but again, it looks at general obligation bonds and the local option taxes, and that's going to further limit the flexibility of the council in terms of where you're going to fund future projects and future operations. One of the things I talked to the assessor about my assessment that I received, and we talked about possible legislation that's going to harden the 3% increase in property tax that's currently in law. And so that concerns me that you're going to be more dependent on increasing the property tax rate in future years, which is again a policy decision we'll have to make when it gets there. The last item, to just reiterate, from my experience operating major facilities, both as operations and maintenance, I think that the future cost of the indoor rec center is much higher than is being thought through at the present time, and that's a general fund cost, and that's going to again be limited in terms of what your options are, or raising some kind of fees or other contributions. Hopefully you can get some of those. With that, I'll answer any questions if you have any, otherwise wait and see if they're answered in the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, moving on, can I get a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Hopkins? Support. Carlstone, any discussion? Okay.
DeYoung is also here.
Oh, DeYoung's here now, okay. So all in favor?
Got connectivity.
All right. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Carlstone,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
DeYoung,
Yes?
Vanderhorst,
Yes.
Anstra.
Yes.
Motion passed. We have somewhat of a worldwide council tonight because Mark is in California and Liz is in the Netherlands, so that's a long, wide range of locations. Okay, we'll move into the public
The
hearing.
tulips are beautiful.
Well, they're getting pretty nice here too. So we'll move into.
I can't wait to see him in a week. Yes.
We'll move into the public hearing on adoption of the fiscal year 23-24 budget. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'd like to direct everyone's attention to the big board, and for those watching at home, and Pella Fiber as well. As Mayor DeWard stated, tonight's public hearing is on adoption of the proposed fiscal year 2024 budget. 2004 budget, 24 budget, extends or would run from the period of time of July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. And let's talk a little bit about the financial highlights of the budget right off the bat. When you ask the question, I often get the question, how much does it cost to actually operate the City of Pella for 1 year? We're looking at this proposed budget would be right at $55.7 million that we have. Now, as far as total revenues for the city and what's being proposed is right around $55.2 million. We do have a slight drawdown, right around $511,000. Now, by and large, when you look at that, that's attributed to capital projects, and what's being proposed to be funded out of the reserves, cash reserves for the City of Pella. The other alternative to eliminate the reserves from a practical standpoint from financing is to issue either debt for that as well, but we believe it's wiser to issue cash reserves in funding these projects. Now, diving into a few issues that typically gain a lot of interest and a lot of discussion on the matter, let's talk about property taxes. This budget, as far as property taxes, means different things for different classes of property. As part of the 2024 budget that we have, if you're the typical property owner in Pella, and I shouldn't say for typical, but a $200,000 house, residential house in Pella, is going to end up paying right around $10 to $13 more in property taxes next year. And that would be for the entire year on it. The reason for that is there's a slight increase in the residential rollback compared to the current fiscal year. However, if you're a commercial and industrial property tax owner in Pella, you will actually receive a property tax cut on it as well, and that's due to state legislation for it. What that meant for the City of Pella, and which made this budget particularly difficult, is that property tax cut cost the city, we believe, in excess of $180,000. The state funding formula for that property tax cut, we believe, is somewhere right around $160,000, but due to the two-tiered structure on it, because it applies to the first $150,000 evaluation of commercial and industrial property, that's very difficult to measure on it as well, but that was one of the items that we had as far as the budget. But overall, when we look at property taxes, we do have a slight decrease in the general fund of just about $44,000 that's being proposed for next year. I want to talk on a few other items that we have listed up on the big board. Local option taxes, the decrease of $300,000 that we have is really attributed to two factors. A, when you look at most cities around the state of Iowa, there has been a decrease in local option funds from COVID on that. In our case, the decrease is somewhat attributed to during the COVID-19 pandemic. We had a lot of online ordering sales, which means we were able to recapture the sales tax in Pella. Since COVID, some of that has leaked out to other communities, namely the Des Moines metro area. But probably the biggest reason for the decrease in local option revenues is next year on it, as we mentioned in the budget, our Marion County redistribution expires on December 31st of this year. For this budget, we do typically budget as far as other that's included in the local option taxes, right around $440,000 in local option reimbursements for that. We're budgeting $220,000, so it's about half that amount that we have in our local option fund on it as well. So we're not budgeting for anything that extends past this year for Marion County. We're going to be talking about Marion County local option on this and how that really is a win-win, not only for the city of Pella, but also for every other city in Marion County. It's very important that the city of Pella has local option tax that is included in the community for several other communities. We'll explain that during policy and planning as well. Now, as far as some of the other items that we have listed up there, some of it's a little play on numbers, some of it is just a good thing for the city. With the utility revenue, what we have is we had an increase in our telecommunications utility on it. We're gaining market share with the utility as well. That's part of the driving force. Part of that, a small minor part of that $2 million increase in utility revenue is actually the projected water rate increase as well. Overall, water rates are fairly flat. With the increase that we do have budgeted, it's about $200,000 of that rate increase. And then we also have some load growth that we're projecting for the electric utility. What I always find fascinating when you look at the city's budget is we spend a lot of time talking about property taxes and services to the city, but if you look at it and you're a numbers person, you can go right to the utility revenues. That's half of our revenue on it. We don't talk a lot about electric utility revenues, but it's very important to the city as well. And so I just like to mention that. Now, as far as the compensation and benefits, we had several, I'd say, anomalies that makes it difficult to compare to the current year. Compensation and benefits, normally that is a big increase. I'm not going to deny that. But we had some play there too this year. What we have in the 2024 budget is full adoption of the Pella Community Ambulance. It's an essential service on that as well. But some of the numbers that you're seeing up there are somewhat skewed because of the ambulance that we do have. And I would say also with our operating expenses as well. But overall, when we look at the compensation in particular, we had the ambulance was part of it. The other item that we have is wage adjustments for city employees, and I'm going to preface my comments. I would match our workforce up against anybody in the state of Iowa on it. We've got a very talented and dedicated staff. Unfortunately, and I think if you talk to any business owner, there's been just a general wage increase for employees. We're not immune to that. It's something that's necessary to keep the talent that we currently have in Pella. And so what's included in this budget overall, when you look at both the cost of, I call it the wage adjustments, along with step increases, we have somewhere right around $860,000 included for those items. Typical year in Pella is $300,000. Another item that made this budget very, very challenging, but I would say as far as discretion on it, there's not a lot of choices with that, and then a lot of this is being driven by the recent compensation study that the city has completed as well. Going on down, we've talked a lot about capital improvements that's included in the budget. Keep in mind the capital improvements being proposed as part of the budget, particularly when we look at the capital improvement program. There's a lot of what I would call private donations or other funding sources on it. But from my standpoint, when we talk about capital improvements and the increase in there too, and we talk about projects, when we have things listed in the budget as far as funding sources, in order for a project to proceed, you have to be able to secure funding sources. If you don't secure funding sources, the project doesn't go on until it does. And so we have a good deal of, I would say, capital improvements that are included, particularly in the 5-year plan, where we are relying on donations or contributions from others. But overall, once again, we have a slight drawdown in fund balance on a $55 million budget that's by and large due to the capital improvements being proposed and being proposed with cash reserves. So before I go on, is there any questions by the council on the financial statements? If not, Mandy, we'll keep it.
Just clarification on the local option tax. So this budget only includes the Marion County reimbursement through December.
That is
because
correct.
we haven't extended it yet, so that would be most of the difference.
Yeah, that's a very good observation, Mayor. So we did not include the full year on it. We only got what they're contractually obligated to have. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as comparisons, we're going to talk, and once again, keep in mind this budget means different things to different people. Residential property owners likely will be paying a slight property tax increase because of the increase in the residential rollback. That's something the city does not have control over. That's established by the state of Iowa. Commercial and industrial property owners will actually have a tax cut with this budget. But when you look at our property tax rate, it really doesn't matter who you compare ourselves to. Generally, our rate is lower than a lot of cities across the state of Iowa. We just have a smattering of cities throughout the state just to show you comparisons on it this way. Council were to approve this budget, this will be the 22nd consecutive year that the budget and the property tax rate has been at $10.20 per thousand. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, what we stated before, the budget does maintain our electric and wastewater rates, but the water rates are being proposed at 7%. Now, when we get to that point with the water rates, what we talked about during the budget with the capital improvement project is we do have some filter repairs and also some, I would say, inspections and potential repairs associated with the city of Jordan wells. We own 2 wells, one of them is our main wells. We need to be in a position for the utility to fund consistently $400,000 worth of capital improvement projects on this. And we also need to make sure that we have a necessity, adequate fund balance. The 7% is necessary to do that. With approval, the budget does not increase water rates by 7%. As council's well aware, that will be required as an ordinance. What we're simply doing is having a 7%. What often is the case when we propose utility rate increases is we budget for a higher rate increase. We're going to evaluate that. If we feel that we can get by for less, we'll propose less, but that's going to have to be an ordinance, and there'll be 3 public readings on that ordinance as well. So please keep that in mind. But the big thing is when you look at water rates, and it's similar to what I tell on electric rates, rates are one thing, but quality of service is everything. When you look at the city's water, I feel we have a very high quality water product that we put out in our pipes. When you compare us to others, it's very difficult because a lot of cities, it really depends on the level of treatment that actually goes in your pipes. And some of the communities that we've listed up on the board, I would tell you our rates are very comparable to anybody that we have. But in particular, when you look at the water quality, not everything shows up in water rates. Some communities perform minimal treatments, and oftentimes customers have to buy filters and other things that don't necessarily show up in water rates to the city of Pella, but they're real expenses to the end customer as well. So please keep that in mind. But if council were to approve the 7% rate increase, we do have what's listed down here, and as you can see, there is an increase. I feel overall, when you do compare us to other communities, particularly on that, from a rate standpoint, we're very competitive. And from a water quality standpoint, I think we have a very high quality product that goes out to our customers as well. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Okay. Big item for us this year was the operating deficit with the Pella ambulance, and I will just once again say I strongly support the action the city council took to continue the service. It's an essential service for the community with it. But likewise, when you look at the ambulance on here and what we have with it again, with the wage adjustments that we have, the ambulance is going to have what we project to be a $641,000 operating deficit for next year. We intended tonight to have discussion as far as service to the townships on this. That's actually going to be scheduled for our May 2nd meeting. I apologize for not having that information for this evening as well. But please keep that in mind. We absorb that within our rates on it. And I think when we look at serving other entities, it's going to be a philosophical issue. We need to continue ambulance service for our entities. That's crucial. But I also think when we talked about partnerships on it, particularly serving rural townships, it's very important that we address the cost of that service because, once again, it's a significant cost for the city. It's an operating deficit, and that's something that's just absorbed in our rates that we had to make room for under the current 1020 on it as well. But more to come on that very subject matter on May 2nd. All right, Andy, let's go ahead, please. Now, we do have nearly a 34% increase in capital projects. Once again, this is attributed to the community center, and not attributed to the community center and rec center. What's being proposed as council initiatives on that as well. We have 6.1 budgeted for these two projects, and as you can see, most of it is what they also include is electric fund transfers that we have that is funding the engineering for both those projects. We have it listed up, and when we talk about the electric utility, once again, we spent a lot of time looking and talking about fund balance. Approval of the budget does not mean we're transferring the funds. Each one of those transfers is going to take a separate council action. What we'll have to come up to, and there'll be a discussion with the council item, is we'll look at the electric utility fund balance, we'll look at the industry standards for fund balance, and how much the utility has as far as utilities. We'll talk about needs, which we tried to articulate with this budget as well. If council declares surplus funding for those transfers will happen, but that's a separate legislative action that council will have to find. Once again, all we're talking about is proposed funding sources at this point in time. Let's go ahead, please, Randy. Again, we just have a litany of items up here, and I want to preface this when we look at the compensation and benefits. I'm very proud of our workforce. We have a top-notch staff here. Unfortunately, it's just been a general trend across the nation with the compensation increases. They're up everywhere. But also, when you look at a skewed number on there, we have a couple services that we've included in this budget that in years past haven't had that as well. And we've tried to summarize the items that's included in this budget that isn't necessarily show up in the FY23 budget. That's basically the lion's share of the proposed increase in compensation. But let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, in summary, once again, Mr. Mayor, we spent a lot of time, and I'd like to thank the council for the time and effort that we did spend on the budget. I thought we had very productive discussions during our work session. But in summary, Mr. Mayor, staff is recommending approval of the proposed budget as submitted for council's consideration this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Nice job. Mandy, do we have any written comments to
No
share?
written comments.
Okay, council comments or questions?
Mike, I had a question on the 22-23 budget. I'm going back to when I used to have to fill these out. I think there's a column for a re-estimation. Is that the re-estimation numbers, or is that the original numbers?
That's the original number that we're comparing ourselves
and
to.
then did we do the re-estimation?
Yes.
And are we above or below the 651?
Should be below the
The net that was going to be added to the reserves.
Yeah, no, we're going to come in well above that 651 this year. Yeah, it may not be from our staff. We try to be very conservative on the budget estimates, but I can tell you a couple things to keep in mind. It's not uncommon for communities when you go down to that compensation and benefits to budget for staff vacancies. We don't do that at Pella. We use that as somewhat of our contingency on matters. So what we try to portray on things, and the reason I can tell you we're going to be above that is we have had staff vacancies this year that our staff is just made up, and we've operated shorthanded on several departments on that as well. So just from the staff vacancies, we'll be above that number. I'm quite confident when we get to certify the audit report. We have for the last several years.
Okay. And then the other question, on the revenue side, did we budget anything from the townships to come in for the ambulance?
Yeah, well, it'll be considered by, in my opinion, this is a council decision on it. The cost answer is yes, we did. They are proposing to pay $36,000 per year on it. What I included that in is for just the initial year on that as well. I thought, and I'm going to preface my comments, I'm not recommending accepting their offer on it, and staff's recommendation is going to be, when you look at the cost of serving the townships, it's well over $100,000. And from my standpoint, if the townships feel they cannot contribute that really becomes an issue for both Marion and Mahaspey County as well. So we budgeted the bare minimum for discussion purposes.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. At the budget meeting the last evening, I was puzzled by slide number 7, which was also the slide that Tony referenced, and the title of that slide is Key Issues for FY 23-24 Marion County Partnership. And at that time, when I asked my question about how can we pass a budget when we haven't even entered into meetings with Marion County, and these are meetings that we've been hearing about since January. So that was 2 weeks ago. There is still not a meeting. But when I asked the question, I was looked at with puzzlement about the slide. And so I did bring a copy of the slide. Clearly you can see it is for this year. I was told that evening that it was not for this year, but I knew clearly it was. So I wanted to lay that on the table, so it still is a puzzlement to me how we can pass a budget with a key partner, but we haven't talked to the key partner yet. My second, there are several issues. My second issue that I find alarming is our CIP, our 5-year capital improvement plan. I took the liberty of going back the 5 years that I've been on council and just jotting down what the typical CIP is, because if you don't know, you just look at that number and you think, oh, $91 million. In 1819, and I'm going to use round numbers, it was 27 million. In 1920, it was 32 million. In 2021, it was also 32 million. In 21-22, it was 24 million. And in 22-23, it was 34 million. The CIP in this budget is $91 million. I have a really hard time looking at that, and when I look at the extension of the CIP and I see the substantial jump that the citizens will have to undertake in the financial year 2025, I become startled.
Anyone else?
I just want to follow up on one of Lynn's, on that first slide. How many dollars of that, because what I understood was that there was no, even though that was a point that what we were going to do, but no dollars came into that budget.
Yeah. I'll give an answer to both of you. When we talk about budgets, the way I approach budgets are always key strategic, I think, positions of the City of Pella. I would tell you, Marion County, that is a key partnership for the City of Pella. And I'd like to think, from Marion County's standpoint, the City of Pella is a pretty key partner as well. What I was trying to articulate is when you look at the local option renewal on it, that's on an annual basis is $440,000. Current year will be the next year, 23-24. We budgeted $220,000, so we did not count the full 12 months on that. Looking forward on a go-forward basis, I think it's going to be a key item for the city that has to be renewed. So I hope I answered your question on that point as well. And that's not to take away, the Marion County is a key party to this position. What we've chosen to do as far as the capital projects, and part of the increases on this, and that's very astute observation, there is an increase on it. We have two things at play with it. Both at the indoor recreation center and you have the community center on the projects. If you were to look at the expenditures, the way we approached it, we had two choices. We are currently raising funds for both projects. Either you don't show the projects at all in the budget, and you show them once you budgeted them, or you budget for the projects on there. Equally, with the budget on the revenue side, looking at future years, you'll see other donations on there, other sources on it. So from the city standpoint, we just try to be transparent on it. Hopefully it didn't cause too much confusion, but with it, the points, I think both have very good points with it, is Marion County is a key strategic partner on a few of these projects, local option, partnership on the rec center. Two, with the current budget, we did not budget the full year for Marion County, so we budgeted about half of the revenue that we normally get, and that's based off a redistribution agreement of about 6 months.
And then I guess maybe this is a purely technical question, but what we're voting on tonight is not CIP for future years, or is it? Maybe because that has to be voted on individually.
Yeah, I think that the answer is there may be, maybe with the resolution, if you could check that with me, usually it's approval of the 2024 budget along with the capital improvement, the 5-year capital improvement project. But the answer to your question is before any of these projects, it doesn't matter what you show in the CIP. All you're talking about is the overview of the financing. There'll be separate legislative actions for each and every one of these items up here, so separate votes.
Yeah, I guess that was my understanding.
Yes.
That we weren't committing to those, but there were things that are on the horizon that we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, a good way of looking at this, when you look at the budget and you look at the city's 5-year CIP on it, the budget establishes the framework of the roadmap for the city and from a financial strategy on it as well. Most of these projects in here are included in the CIP, separate legislative actions, up or down votes on each and every one of them. So just because you approve something in the budget doesn't necessarily, particularly the bigger items that we have on here, doesn't necessarily mean that they're approved. A lot of these projects, just due to their size, are going to require separate public hearings, separate legislative items on it as well. A few of the CIP, the smaller amount ones, particularly when you get to vehicles and equipment under the city's purchasing policy and under state law, can be administratively approved at administrative level once the budget is established. But generally for capital improvement projects, there's separate votes required for those.
And Mike, I agree with that, and I know that that's how we do it. But when I look in the budget and I look for the cause why we do the 5-year CIP, to ensure future growth proceeds in an orderly and planned manner, to provide the city with long-range financial plans with which to address the capital improvements needs of the growing city in a fiscally responsible yet progressive manner. So I think that reasonable investment in a community is completely necessary. My question to you is this reasonable? Is $91 million reasonable? And the 5-year CIP is included in our budget packet. It is part of the budget packet. So to kind of do a bunch of word salad and act like we're not voting on this CIP really isn't necessarily true. We are voting on this 5-year CIP. Yes, after the vote, then as each project comes up, we'll vote individually, but make no doubt about it, this $91 million is part of this packet in this budget.
Yeah, I don't want to, hopefully I didn't say anything that would deter anyone from anything. Our goal in presenting the capital improvement project is A, to reflect the priorities of the city, what's been communicated from council to staff on it. The last thing that we wanted to do, we wanted to be transparent. The investments that we're talking about within our community are significant. They show up in the capital improvement project. And by putting them in the capital improvement project, what we try to do is also identify the funding sources that we talked about with both of them. So we're not trying to hide anything from city administration standpoint. We're trying to be transparent on it as well. What I was simply articulating is the budget, capital improvement projects. When you approve the budget, you'll have a vote on the operating budget, tax levy. A lot of those projects in the capital improvement project will be separate legislative items on it as well. And so I hope that, again, I'm not trying to be anything but transparent on it. I hope I've answered your question.
You did.
Anything else from up here? All right, so, sorry.
I will say that Strategic Partners has been thrown out there a lot. Marion County is obviously a strategic partner. But I will throw in, as a relative newcomer to the community at 17 years, that I really readily realize how dependent I am professionally on our corporate and industrial partners in town. And I feel like they're very much strategic partners, and we can talk about our CIPs and budgets for last season or our future, but without industrial base that generates hundreds of millions of dollars, I'm sure you guys know those numbers, I don't, but hundreds of millions of dollars a year, it's kind of semantics to judge on past numbers or future numbers. We have to be a council that's foresightful enough to create a space where our industries and our employers, especially our large employers, can continue to thrive and be successful here, because that benefits everybody. So those are also strategic partners, and projects that have big numbers behind them do nothing but help bolster that ability for those companies to recruit and maintain talented people, because these economic pressures, these cultural pressures are on everybody, and I don't think anything is a sure thing anymore. And so us investing in those infrastructural pieces to allow our corporations to succeed is an utmost strategic partner we need to consider as well. Hopefully that was hearable. I'm trying to talk loudly without feedbacking.
Okay, anyone else? All right, it's your turn. Anyone out there want to make a comment about the budget while we are in open session here? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Support.
Hopkins, Banstra, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Anstra,
Yes.
Carlstone,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
DeYoung,
Yes.
Vanderhorst.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to the resolution. Number 6575, entitled Resolution Adopting the Fiscal Year 23-24 Annual Budget. I doubt there's anything to add. We've talked a long time about this already. So I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Support.
Banstra, Carlstone, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Anstra,
Yes.
Carlstone,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
DeYoung,
Yes.
Vanderhorst.
No.
Motion passed. Moving on, special event permit request for 2023 Tulip Time Festival. Mike, please
Thanks.
explain.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a relatively new event that no one's ever heard about called Tulips. No, just kidding. This event's a key thing for the City of Pella, and we're also very fortunate that for years the Historical Society has sponsored this, but this request comes tonight from both the Historical Society as well as the Tulip Time Steering Committee, and what they're asking for is a special event permit request for the Tulip Time Festival, which is being proposed on May 4th, 5th, and 6th this year. We do have requested street and alley closures that are shown on the map up here. It may be a little hard to read, but there's a number of streets and closures that will need to occur within our community, and I believe they're fairly consistent with what's been asked, requested in the past as well. Mandy, do we have any additional slides? Okay. It's also important to note that the promoter is also requesting a fireworks display on Friday, May 5th. In case of the event of inclement weather, that would be postponed or rescheduled until Saturday of that as well. Very important to note that the fireworks would be launched near Central College practice fields as well, and it's our understanding that Central College has approved this location for the fireworks. Now, in summary, Mr. Mayor, all pertinent city departments have reviewed this application. Our comments are included in the packet. Fee and required insurance certificates have been received, and tonight the city staff is recommending approval of both the permit as well as the street closures.
Thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support. Vanderhorst, Hopkins, any discussion? So I see the location fireworks is
Yeah.
moving.
Well, that's
That
4th
helped.
of July.
Yeah. Was this always here?
Yeah.
Central, okay. Yeah, 4th of July, we talked about
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Vanderhorst,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
DeYoung,
Yes.
Anstra,
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on, resolution number 6576, entitled Resolution Temporarily Closing Public Ways or Grounds in Connection with a Special Event Known as 2023 Tulip Time Festival. Doubt there's anything to add, so can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support. Banstra, Hopkins, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Anstra,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
DeYoung,
Yes.
Vanderhorst,
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Special event permit request for the 2023 Farmers Market. Mike?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd be happy to explain this item. And as Mayor DeWard stated, tonight we do have a request from the Pella Farmers Market to hold their special event permit, or the Farmers Market for calendar year 2023. It's important to note that Central Park has been the location of the market, particularly on the east side of Central Park in 2021 and 2022. This year, the promoter would like to expand to the north side of the Central Park, which maybe I believe is the yellow or gold highlighted area that's listed up on the board as well. Let's go ahead, please, Mindy. And we do have the operation dates on there, but basically it's every Thursday from April 27th to October 26th. Now, if council were to approve this, we would also like to point out that a resolution is also included for this consideration for the street closures that are necessary to accommodate farmers market and the proposed operating dates. Now, as far as city staff review is concerned, all city departments have reviewed this application. In addition, fee and insurance certificates have been received. And then with this, we are recommending both approval of the special event permit as well as the resolution for the necessary street closures or street parking space closures to accommodate the event. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support.
Horst, Carl Stone, any discussion?
Pardon me, sir.
Just a second, I'll give you a chance.
Yes, sir.
All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Vanderhorst,
Yes.
Carlstone,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Spore,
Yes.
DeYoung,
May have lost him.
Anstra,
Yes.
Motion passed. What did you,
Honorable Mayor, I just wanted to let you know I'm the director of the farmers market this year, and I was prepared to answer any questions that the council had with some of the changes to the permit request.
okay?
But it's a moot point, but thank you very much for approving our permit.
Thank you for introducing yourself. Appreciate that. Okay, moving on to resolution number 6577, entitled Resolution Temporary Closing Public Ways or Grounds in Connection with a Special Event known as 2023 Farmers Market. Nothing to add, I assume?
That's correct.
I get a motion for approval.
Supported.
Hopkins, Carlstone. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Carlstone,
Yes.
Spore,
Yes.
Vanderhorst,
Yes.
Anstra.
Yes.
Motion passed. Talk about rescheduling the regular council meeting on July 4th, 2023 to July 5th, 2023.
You can pretty explain that, Mr. Mayor.
I was going to say, it's not a whole lot of explanation. I don't know that we want to be here on the night of the 4th, so. Can I get a motion for approval?
Support.
Who motioned it?
Or so moved. That's right. I was moving
So
along. This is just
Carl
schedule.
Stone, Hopkins. Any discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Carlstone,
Yeah.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Spore,
Yes.
Vanderhorst,
Yes.
Anstra.
Yes.
Motion passed. New commercial garbage hauler license for J. Petticord Inc. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. As Mayor DeWart stated, Mr. Petticord, or Jay Petticord, excuse me, has applied for a new 12-month commercial garbage hauler's license. We do have a description of what the company plans to do as well. It is important to note that the contractor, proposed contractor rather, would be required to dispose of the product or the product, either garbage or waste rather, at the Marion County landfill. And in accordance with city policy, the application fee and certificate of insurance have been received. City staff is recommending approval this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Vanstra? Support. Hopkins, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Anstra,
Yes.
Hopkins,
Yes.
Spore,
Yes.
Vanderhorst,
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Resolution number 6578, entitled Resolution Ordering Construction of the Idaho Drive Electric Distribution Conversion and fixing a date for hearing thereon and taking of bids therefore. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. Once again, what we're doing with this resolution is, we're simply establishing the public hearing date to actually June 6th for this project is what you're really doing. You're also authorizing city staff to solicit bids for this proposed project. I would state this is a very important project from a reliability standpoint for the City of Pella. If you look at the current overhead line, and what you see up on the big board is a map. and it basically extends from the city's water treatment plant, the blue highlighted area just south of Bosselondon. We have a distribution line out there that's overhead, and what we're proposing to do is place that line underground. In addition, we're going to run a separate feeder down to the city's Jordan well that's located, you can't see on the map as well, it's just due south and southeast of this, where the project terminates up on the board as well. From a reliability standpoint, I would rate this project very high. For the City of Pella, we have a little bit of description on it, but again, we're placing the line underground as well for the electric utilities. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Council approves this resolution, which what we're doing is simply setting the public hearing date, and you're authorizing city staff to solicit bids for this. We're going to hold a bid opening on May 17th for the project, if all goes well. With the bid opening, the bids come in accordance from the city's financial expectations. We'll hopefully award a contract on this project on June 6th, and then hopefully be able to start the contract relatively soon after that. Now, as far as the substantial completion, which that means is the projects that are completed to the point for its intended use, we're looking at June 30th, 2024. Now, as far as the city's cost for the project, the engineer's estimated cost is you're somewhere between $680,000 and $720,000 for the project. We do believe that is within accordance with our financial expectations, and from city staff standpoint, again, this is a key reliability item for the City of Pella. And so necessary, it's going to improve the reliability on the project, particularly for the customers that I would say that would be located off Idaho Drive as well as Bosselondon as well. So again, Mr. Mayor, we're not going to be discussing that. We're just simply setting June 6th as the public hearing date for this, and you're authorizing city staff to solicit bids for this project.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Randers, support. Hopkins, any discussion or questions? I see Nate is here.
Is this just for, this is bid just for putting the pipe in the ground?
Just the pipe, yes. Our utility workers traditionally put the electrical lines within those pipes. And we get that material at a later date.
So we won't need too many specialty contractors to come in?
Nope, it's a pretty standard build.
Okay, anything else? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Reindeerhorst?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Spore?
Yes.
DeAnstruck?
Yes.
Carlstone?
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to abstracted bills number 2125. Can I get a motion for approval?
Move to approve and issue warrants.
Randers. Hopkins, any discussion or questions? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Reindeerhorst?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Spore?
Yes.
DeAnstruck?
Yes.
Carlstone?
Yes.
Motion passed. Anyone on council have any other business you'd like us to address this evening? Okay, anyone out there have any business you'd like to address us with this evening? If you do, please step forward, state your name and address. Try to limit your comments to 3 minutes.
John Butler, 406 Franklin Street, Pella. Thought about this a lot, and there's basically 2 ways for us to learn something. We have history, historical data, similar situations, how did it work out, that sort of thing. Or experiential. How much have you experienced? You have opportunity here to listen to people who've had a lot of experience. Mr. Ehrlich's had a lot of experience. He should be consulted more closely, I believe. I've had a fair amount of experience in owning businesses and building things and borrowing money and paying it back. And so I just want to remind you of a little story I told several weeks ago about Bloomington, Illinois, where we used to live. 20 years ago or so, the city people voted on whether or not to build a civic center. The people said no. The city council did it anyway. First of all, none of those city council members that voted for that project got reelected. Got booted. Second of all, the city still has this beautiful civic center that's never made money. And as a burden, they're still paying on the bonds. And we were recently in Bloomington, and I can tell you the streets are suffering. They've spent the money. They're committed to send the money to that bond, and they are neglecting their streets. I can tell you, from my experience here in Pella, we need a lot of street improvement. I think streets make a town sparkle. Good streets, you drive in, people come in on Washington, they drive down Franklin or 3rd Avenue East there. A lot of that needs replacing. I mean, the main business district, I think, looks a little shabby streetwise. So, anyway, there's 2 ways to learn. People in this room that get up here and talk have had experiences. And then there's history. When you borrow too much money, I think Paul Harvey said, it's always easier to borrow money than pay it back. And the other thing that still I can't quite get my hands around is approving engineering plans for property we don't own. No bank would do that. Not in my experience. That's my experience. I've had to round up 15-year leases before I could borrow money. I've had to buy land before I could borrow the money. How did we do it? Are we running a bank? We're basically a bank with people's money. A grain elevator is a bank. Tax income is like you're running a bank. Take care of our money. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, we will move into our policy and planning to discuss the redistribution agreement for local option sales tax. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. As we stated earlier in this meeting, our agreement with Marion County expires on December 31st of this year. And what we're simply requesting permission to do is contact both Marion County as well as the City of Knoxville and begin the process to renegotiate this agreement. A little bit of background on this is important to know when we talk about sales tax, and the easiest way to look at this is under the state funding formula, is we share our sales tax with everybody in Marion County. The state of Iowa, even though Pella generates 65% of the sales tax in Marion County, I believe offhand, we only receive roughly 29% of the proceeds. And from that equity on it, the state distribution formula does not have anything to do where the funds are generated from. Now, I would state when we talk about Marion County, they've been very good to work with through the years. We've had a redistribution agreement with Marion County since 2007 on this matter. And they've recognized this inequity and this issue with the state funding formula. They also recognize that there's several other cities and Marion County that benefit directly from having the Pella sales tax collected in Pella as well. So with this, it's always been a thought, as far as I'd say a cooperative effort, that's in everybody's best interest that there is a redistribution agreement. And rather than get in and talk about some of the specifics, what we're currently stating is currently Knoxville receives 4% of countywide lost revenues. Marion County distributes back to Knoxville. Pella gets 8% on this as well. And traditionally what we've used those funds to is support road improvements and quality of life projects in our community as well. So what we're just simply asking permission to do is start the process. We want to send the letters off to both Marion County and Knoxville and start the negotiation process on the loss agreement with it as well. And before we did that, we wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page and we had authorization from the council to begin that process.
Okay.
Do you have to negotiate just with Knoxville, or do you have to do Bussy?
No. On that, the reason why we have Knoxville and Marion County, we're talking about rural Marion County, so this would be the unincorporated areas. Pella and Knoxville and traditionally have generated 95% of the sales tax in Marion County. And frankly, without either of those two entities on there, there's a whole lot of other entities that benefit from the sales tax being collected. Maybe a little bit off on this, but I believe 75% of the formula is based off your census. The other 25% is based off your property valuations between the year 1984 and 1986. Don't ask me why. That's what it took for the state legislature to pass the tax, the local option tax, back in the mid-'80s. on it. That's the reason why you have this funding discrepancy, how you can generate 65% of the sales tax and only receive 29% on it as well. So,
Have you at all looked at, it'll be based now on the 2020 census, and are we going to lose ground percentage-wise? Because I think overall the county, maybe we didn't retain our same percentage population maybe throughout the whole county.
yeah, there may be some slight changes to that as far as the distribution, so that inequity could be even greater. That's why we don't want to be making comments. Currently it's 8% and Knoxville's 4%. We're going to hash those types of details out.
It'd be interesting too to see that assessment back in 84, 86, where that would be now too, which would be, I think Pella would have a far higher one now than it did then.
Okay. Go ahead. Start the negotiation process.
Thank you.
All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Manster, Hopkins. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
DeAnstruck,
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Vanderhorst,
Yes.
Carlstrom.
Yes.
We are adjourned.